Hi, dear friends. This is Lisa Marie here with you, talking about being conditioned. What's our purpose on this planet? If you get to be my age, which I'm 65, there are times when we feel like we've failed and we begin to wonder, like, why am I even here? What's my purpose here? We don't understand. Especially when we feel like we've just sunk so low and we don't even know how to pull ourselves up. It's a horrible feeling. Well, I'm going to tell you a story. I must be thinking about my dad a lot today because I just told the story about the red cardinal with my dad. But my dad and I had a very, very rocky relationship. It was I would describe it more as a love-hate relationship. I loved him dearly, but there were times that I didn't like him because he could be so cruel and mean with the things that he said. A very generous man, but I guess the best way to describe him was like Archie Bunker, only he wasn't so arrogant and flew off the handle like Archie did. And what's funny is his wife acted. She was an Edith Bunker. She acted just like Edith, only she wasn't. She had her issues too. But anyway, my dad, so many times I can remember all throughout my life, he would talk about how poor his family was. His father, this is like back in, the 40s. He was 83 when he died, and he died about 4.5 years ago or something like that. But he always talked about how poor they were. His dad was an alcoholic. His mother had a second-grade education. She worked her fingers to the bone doing like manual labor, whatever. They had 5 children. They lived in a 2-bedroom house, and they had 4 boys and 1 girl. And the boy, all 4 boys shared a room together. My dad and his younger brother, they shared a bed, and in the other bed, my other 2 uncles slept together. And then they had a daughter. The 5th child was a daughter, and she was the youngest one. And she slept in the room with my grandmother and grandfather. And my grandfather was a severe alcoholic. He died at a very young age. I want to say like in his mid-40s due to alcoholism. And my dad that's all he talked about. Any time he talked about his youth, he talked about how poor they were and how they just didn't have anything. He had the opportunity to go to college on a football scholarship. He was the captain of the football team when he was the senior in high school, and he had a scholarship, but he didn't take it because he didn't want to put that burden on his mother. And he told me that he and his brothers, they decided that once they became of age, and this is like during the time, like right before Vietnam, they all decided they were going to join the military so that they would take the burden off their mother and be able to support themselves. And so he never got to go to college, and loved politics, always talked about politics. And but he would always say mean things to me, and I always would feel, because I was a hippie. I grew up in hippie days. I was in the 70s. I was born in 1961, so I got into the tail end of this hippies, and I was a disappointment to him. And So there were times that I couldn't be around him because he could say some really mean things. And the last thing that he said, he insulted, it was the most highest insult that he had ever given to me. And I had gone through a lot of spiritual therapy, doing a lot of healing, and had grown into my own empowerment. And when he said that to me, I got up and walked out. I was like, okay, I'm done. Love you very much, but I can't do this anymore. And so I walked out, didn't see him again for 3 years because I just couldn't deal with it anymore. And then 3 years later, I discover in conversation with my stepsister that he had been in the hospital, that he had been in a nursing home for about 5 or 6 months, and that he was in a nursing home, and that he had developed dementia, and it was really bad. We knew that he had signs of dementia, but it really kicked in. So I found out where he was at, and I went to visit him, and he knew who I was. Didn't know my name, but he knew who I was. I could tell because of some of the things that he was saying. And I decided to commit my life, my time to him from that moment on until, he was to pass away. I didn't realize the severity or how serious it was. Didn't really understand dementia. And I would get these little reports from my stepsister because she was the one that was really on top of everything with the doctors and all that. So anyway, we agreed that we would bring him home because that's where he wanted to die. He didn't want to die in a hospital or anything. So we agreed to bring him home, and we would rotate shifts, my stepsister and I. And I noticed a change in my dad. He was very touchy-feely. What I mean by that is he was always wanting to hug me, telling me how much he loved me, how proud he was of me. Sometimes he would get me confused with his sister. But and just so sweet. And I remember we were in the living room, and I just received a text from a family member from my mother's side of the family that one of my cousins had passed away. And I broke down right in front of my dad. And he jumped up off the couch. He said, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I'm like crying. I'm like explaining that I had just found out that my cousin had passed away. And he walked over to me and hugged me and just held me and told me, how sorry he was. And now, the reason why I'm telling you this story is because in the past, before the dementia had kicked in, I can remember many times sitting down with my dad and saying, "Oh, I just found out that so-and-so passed away." And his response would be, "No, that's what happens, People live and they die. That's, part of life." And no emotion, nothing. That's what happens. People die, and he just was so cold and no emotion. But this time it was completely opposite. And then I noticed while I was taking care of him, I became sick, a stomach bug or something. And he would get up at 2 a.m. and walk into the living room where I was sleeping and sit down next to me. And I'd be like, "Daddy, what do you want?" "Well, I'm just checking on you. I know you were sick." He could remember a few things, and he didn't know who I was, but he knew that I was sick, and so he would check on me. And one night he did the most unusual thing. He woke up around weird, very early in the morning, like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I was sitting up on the couch with him, and he took my arm, and he's just rubbing my arm, just rubbing it, massaging it. And I let him do it because he's never done anything like that with me. He was not one that could say I love you, or he could not hug you. He just was, no, very, very cold. His idea of telling his love language to not just me, but to the rest of the family was not in words of I love you, I'm proud of you, or anything like that. It was he worked for the railroad, the CSX railroad, and he provided. He was a provider. That was his love language because he didn't have that. So I began to do some serious brainstorming or some thoughts, some heavy thoughts, and this is what came to me, and especially when I start thinking about, like, what am I doing with my life? Why am I here? What's my purpose? And we all, I believe, think that sometimes. For some of us, we discover it very quickly, very early in life, and that's great. But for some of us, we feel like misfits, and we're not misfits. We're not. We have a purpose here. Whether you find your purpose early on or later in life, that's totally up to you. But what I realized with my dad was the way that he acted before he passed away. That was the man that he was really supposed to be when he was born. But his life, the hardships of his life conditioned him to be the hard man that he turned out to be. And it wasn't until he got the dementia and didn't remember anything, he converted back to what he was, the person that he was meant to be before all those things of life experiences hit him and turned him into the person that he was. So I began to understand that, okay, I too have been conditioned in many ways by my life experiences. And one of the things that I talk about in my sessions is that we have to uncondition what we've been conditioned to in order to move forward and find that true peace and happiness that we're destined for. So I began to evaluate, or reflect on, okay, what's happened in my life that has conditioned me to have certain behavior, thoughts, beliefs, patterns, unhealthy patterns in my life. What is it that I was conditioned to, and how do I break free of that conditioning? And so that is the challenge that I give to you, my dear friends, is looking back at your life. If you're feeling like you've missed something, or you're not, you're wondering, like, what is your purpose? Why are you here? Because we all have a purpose. And for some, it just may be being a mom, for some, it may just be, being a mom and taking care of these children that you have, helping them succeed or whatever, and for others, it may be something, what seems real glamorous and everything, but if you get behind, if you go behind the scenes, it wasn't so glamorous for many people that are very, very successful to get to where they're at. But so the thing that I'm going to challenge you with today is trying to figure out, like, what exactly, what were you conditioned to from your life, the pain or traumas, life experiences that has brought you to any kind of habit, behavior, thought, belief that has not been healthy, has not been in your best interest. And once you identify what those things are, then we can work on unconditioning you so that you can be free of all of that and walk into your life purpose. Anyway, food for thought. Thank you for listening. And I invite you to visit my website. It is listed in the box below. I would love to help you or talk to you. Please visit my website and contact me. Bye-bye.